El episodio de Mi Yo Futuro que van a ver a continuación está grabado con el profesor Meir Statman. Statman seguramente hoy en día es el mayor experto mundial en finanzas conductuales. Es una persona que ha evolucionado desde la parte más matemática de las finanzas, en la que incluso ha sido pionero en la elaboración de modelos matemáticos de inversión conductual, siguiendo las pautas conductuales, ha creado modelos de carteras conductuales, etcétera, y ha ido evolucionando hacia el concepto integral del bienestar, donde el bienestar financiero evidentemente es una parte importante. Statman acaba de escribir su último libro, que hemos traducido al español con el título de El valor del bienestar, y la edición con la editorial Versus, y es una edición en la cual ustedes podrán ver también cuáles los diferentes conceptos que tienen que ver con el bienestar general. El bienestar es financiero, pero también es bienestar emocional, también es bienestar físico, por supuesto, y todos se influyen y se retroalimentan. En ese sentido, el libro y la charla que van a ver ustedes ahora con Statman profundiza en todos estos aspectos. Quería además informarles que en el Global Pensions Program, que va a ser los días 22 y 23 de octubre en Bilbao, vamos a contar con el profesor Statman. Va a estar en vivo Meir Statman, donde nos va a explicar su visión del bienestar desde el punto de vista general, desde esa óptica general. Les esperamos en Bilbao, no se lo pierdan, y ahora disfruten del episodio de Mi Yo Futuro. Muchas gracias.
Mi Yo Futuro, con Diego Valero. Síguenos en Spotify, iVoox y Apple Podcast.
Well, there is a breaking point where more money doesn't necessarily mean more happiness in the same proportion. This is a concept that many of us may have heard but few truly understand. Today, we're going to explore how financial well-being connects with general well-being and whether we can truly find happiness through money. Professor, you've explored the intricate relationship between financial well-being and happiness. Given that many studies suggest diminishing returns on happiness beyond a certain income level, how do you believe individuals can optimize their financial decisions to enhance their overall well-being without falling into the trap of constantly chasing more wealth?
Well, we have financial well-being when we balance our saving and spending and investing such that we are financially secure now and in the future. But we enjoy life well-being when we live fully satisfying lives full of purpose and meaning. Now, we need financial well-being to enjoy life well-being, but it is life well-being that we seek.
To delve into this fascinating intersection between finance and happiness, I'm honored to speak with Meir Statman, professor of finance at Santa Clara University and one of the most influential figures in the field of behavioral finance. Meir has dedicated much of his career to unraveling the relationship between financial well-being and personal well-being, and his work has been instrumental in understanding how our financial decisions impact our overall happiness. Welcome to my future self, Meir. It's a really pleasure to have you with us.
Well, it is wonderful to speak with you, Diego.
Thank you very much. In addition to his numerous contributions to the field, Meir Statman has recently published The Wealth of Wellbeing, a book that explores the intricate connections between wealth and happiness. We're excited to announce that this groundbreaking work will soon be available in Spanish, translated by our team and published by Versus with the support of Ibercaja. This edition will undoubtedly enrich the ongoing conversation on how financial decisions shape our well-being, further extending Meir's influential insights to Spanish-speaking audiences. We are sure you are all going to enjoy it. Meir, in your work, you discuss how financial well-being is related to general well-being. Could you explain how this concept connects to a person's happiness and daily life?
Yes. So when you ask people what is really important in life, in all likelihood, they're going to begin with family. Family matters, marriage, children, grandchildren. They might mention friends, they might mention work. But typically, they don't really mention money until later. And yet, when economists talk about well-being, they talk about money first and foremost. And so what is happening really is that we need money for well-being. We need money for family. We need money for raising kids. But it is really, at the end, we are looking for well-being. So money itself gives us well-being. It is better to be wealthy than poor, but money also underlies all the other domains of well-being. And so we have family, as I mentioned, we have friends, we have work, we have health, we have education, we have religion. We have society. Some of the things that happen in society are painful or exhilarating for us. And so that also adds to our well-being or takes away from it.
Mm-hmm. And in that sense, would you say that financial insecurity, for example, has an even greater impact on our perception of happiness than simply having enough money?
Absolutely. So money is important, as I said, on its own, because we need money to just buy things, to have a house, to buy a car, to have food, and so on. And more money, in fact, adds to our well-being. That is, more money means that day to day we are less frustrated, that our experienced well-being, how we feel at the moment, is really better. So, if you have a lot of money and something goes wrong, well, no big deal. So you pay an extra for the hotel, or maybe they cheated you out of $1,000. It is annoying, but it's not a big deal. But if you're poor and your car breaks down and it costs $1,000 to fix and you don't have that $1,000, it is really a big deal. And so money is important on its own. Status matters. You ask yourself, why is it that people who have $1 billion strive to have 2 billion? Surely not to have one other house. But it is because they are comparing themselves to people who have more. And social status is relative to what other people have. But you can see that, of course, knowing when enough is enough is really matters. Yeah. But again, if you have money, it means that you can support the family. You can sometimes bad things happen. Sometimes you have a disabled child. Sometimes your son or daughter gets divorced, or they lose their job, and so on. If you have money, you can cover that. If not, you are really in a miserable spot. And so, again, money is important, but it is life well-being that we seek.
Yeah, I think it's clear, and your vision about that it's very clever, because we are human beings, of course, and maybe the goal of every one of us is to be happy. So this is clearly linked. Then accepting that financial well-being is linked to this general or life well-being, it seems logical to think that a solid financial education is crucial. What role do you believe financial education plays in improving people's well-being?
Financial education plays a crucial role in improving people's financial well-being and life well-being. And we think about education, we think about maybe high school, we think about universities, we think about courses, but this is not really where we gain our basic and most important financial knowledge. This really comes from home, and not from lectures of parents, but really from children observing what their parents do. So my father, for example, if we got a gift of money for a birthday or something else, he opened for us a savings account. And if I put the money into that account rather than spend it, he would double it. And so
it's a matching contribution then.
And so, yeah, even though that money is in the bank rather than as a toy, I know that 200 is better than 100, and so it does it. So it is a very good, important lesson, which I taught my own children. My mother used to say, spend money, but don't waste it. And so once when we went to a bookstore to get books when I was in third grade or so, at the end, the proprietor added up the account and told the sum, and my mom asked if there is possibly a discount. And I was kind of embarrassed because I thought that bargaining is not really nice. But the seller said, sure, and she took off 10%. And she explained to me that there's nothing wrong with asking for a discount. And so you can see how we learn from parents. Sometimes, however, we learn the wrong lessons. Sometimes, if we are smart about it, we see that, say, our parents get themselves in debt, they spend too much, and then there is difficulty for everyone, and then they say, I will not repeat those kinds of errors. I'm going to do better, and I'm going to teach my children better. And so we learn those things at home. Then comes what we learn in school. And these lessons are really very important. And people come from backgrounds where there's not a whole lot of money, sometimes get wrong notions about how it is that people get their money. So they think a high school teacher who teaches personal finance told me about her class where it serves two neighborhoods. One is kind of a working class neighborhood and one is a wealthy neighborhood. And the kids from the working class neighborhood think that the wealthy families got wealthy by buying some spectacular stocks.
Yeah.
But of course, that's not how they got wealthy. They got wealthy by education and by enterprise. They are lawyers, they are doctors, they are owners of businesses and so on. And so one, it is really important to have financial education, and it is important to have the right financial education. People say, do you understand compounding? If you just don't spend the money on coffees at the Starbucks, you're going to have so much when you retire. That really is not the thing, that is just showing compounding is not going to persuade anyone. What is really necessary is to teach what really matters. For example, that speculating on stocks is more likely to diminish your wealth rather than add to your wealth. These are really the most important things. And they are hard. I talked with high school teachers who teach personal finance, and one of them said, well, isn't it the case that if you watch stocks, sometimes they go up and down, kind of like a sine wave, and so you know when to buy and what to sell? No, it does not work, because finance is a science, and you have to look at the theory and you have to look at the data. And the data shows that system by which you buy low and sell high just does not work. So it's better off if you just buy and hold. So it's important to learn the correct lessons and have the correct financial literacy.
Okay, so in part is a matter of mirrors for the bad and for the good, and to have some kind of education in order to live in a proper manner, and understanding not the technical issues about finance, but the practical consequences of a bad use of finance, maybe, no?
That is exactly right. Yeah. So in fact, I have a paper that's coming out in the Wall Street Journal about risk. So when we talk about, what is your risk tolerance, we think immediately about financial risk. Are you going to put a lot in stocks or in bonds? But the risk that really has the most rewards is career risk. That is, I'm thinking of myself. That is, I took a big risk when I was bored with my job in Israel after I finished my studies at the Hebrew University, and I decided to come to the United States to get a PhD. I was already married. We were expecting our first daughter. It was a big deal because I had a secure job. What will happen if I don't get a PhD? What will happen if I don't get a professor's position? But I knew that if I succeed, if that risk pays off, I will have not only money, but more important, I will have life satisfaction from a job and a career that is a vocation. Really, for me, being a professor is really part of me, almost as much as being a husband and a father.
Hopefully for all of us. The people that have studied following your work, your books, your impressive work. We are very happy that you decide as part of your life to be a professor, of course.
Yes.
So let's move a little bit to behavioral finance. You've mentioned several times that traditional financial planners don't always consider behavioral finance in their strategies. Could you tell us why you think this is a mistake?
Well, increasingly, financial advisors, financial planners know behavioral finance, and they know how important it is. And so it is fairly common now among financial advisors that they will teach clients about cognitive and emotional errors. So they will teach them about how, for example, hindsight is not foresight. They will give them examples. In fact, one financial advisor has a nice trick. At the beginning of the year, when she meets the clients, she asks them to make forecasts about the coming year. Will the stock market be up by this much or that much or go down? Will Donald Trump be divorced? Who's going to win the election? All kinds of stuff. And of course, at the end of the year, clients think that they just knew everything in foresight, and so she showed them that list, and then they see that did not. And so financial advisors by now teach people about cognitive errors. They teach them about emotional errors, about, say, excessive fear. Sometimes people say, I'm going to sell all my stocks because the stock market is down, and so on. And financial advisors help them calm down and not do something stupid. Now, it is interesting that many, if not most, financial advisors, in fact, also act as well-being advisors. That is, they really care about people's well-being, how happy you are, how satisfying your life is. And so they ask about family, they ask about education, they ask about marriage, they ask about friends, and so on. What I do in the book is really provide more of that information for financial advisors. One of the nice things about the book is that it provides a way for them to either begin conversations or continue conversations that cross from money to life, because they might be reluctant to ask clients about their children. They'd rather talk about what the Federal Reserve is going to do. But what is really important is that parts that go beyond money. And that is often difficult. Sometimes clients will come and say it up front, and they will say things like, what is really most important for me that is that we have a disabled son, and it is really important for you to plan for him such that he is supported long after we are gone before you start planning for us. That's good. But sometimes you really have to gently get it out of them because they think that this is kind of private. But all of those private things, like a marriage that is about to collapse, have financial implications. And so it is really important for financial advisors to act as well-being advisors, to act as, sometimes I describe it as financial physicians. That is, we expect physicians to be at the frontier of knowledge in medicine. We expect financial advisors to be at the frontier of knowledge of finance, but we also expect them to be, had good bedside manner, to be able to, so that even if the news is bad, medical or financial, you leave the office with a sense that you at least know where you stand, you know the options, and so on. So again, many financial advisors already act as well-being advisors, but it is important to get the rest of them to know that they are managing more than investments, that they are managing investors, and it is important to focus on their well-being.
Of course. In your last book, you propose a holistic view of finance. In fact, a holistic view of the full life, of course. So, regarding that, do you think there's a disconnect between what classical finance theory teaches and what really happens in practice when people make these financial decisions?
Oh yeah, I think that the academic profession in finance is really well behind financial advisors, because financial advisors talk with normal people, and they know what really ails them. So it is very satisfying to develop those models of rational people, and then you ask yourself, if you're already rational and you know all of that, why do you go to school? Well, you don't know, and so there are many things where there is something that looks like a conflict or a puzzle. For example, the first paper that my colleague Hersh Shefrin and I wrote was about dividends and why it is that people like dividends. So standard finance that I learned at the Hebrew University says the dividends don't matter, because if you don't get the dividend from the company, say $1,000 that you expected to get, you just sell $1,000 worth of stocks and you get a homemade dividend. Well, when I came to New York and we had the energy crisis in 1973, the shareholders of Con Ed, the utility company, almost wanted to kill the chairman of the board because they had to stop the dividend because the prices of oil went up and they could not raise their charges fast enough to compensate for that. And nobody said, well, you could just sell a few shares of Con Ed and get that. And so this is how, my colleague and I started to think, and we said, okay, here's how normal people think about it. People make a distinction between what is capital and what is income. We move money from income to capital as we put it in a savings account from our paycheck. And then we use self-control rules that say spend income, but don't dip into capital. And selling stocks feels like dipping into capital. And so people don't do that. So we said, good or bad, we are just saying, here's how normal people behave. We looked at things like the reluctance to realize losses. Now, when you realize losses, then you get tax benefits because you write it off your taxes. And yet people are reluctant to realize losses. Why? And again, we used what we know from psychology and human behavior to explain the issues of regret, for example, that come when you realize losses. People will say, no, it's just a paper loss, it will come back. But when you realize it, then you kiss the money goodbye, and people are reluctant to do it. And so I can go on and on and on with examples. In fact, one of the things that is most satisfying in my work is really to look at real world, to look at theory, to see where they don't match and ask myself why, and see if I can find the answer to that.
Great. Let me ask you about other thing that you explain in your book. In your last book, you have a lot of books, and very good of all them. This is how financial well-being can vary across cultures. In some countries like Japan or South Korea, financial status, you talked before about the status, has a huge impact on the perception of well-being. Do you think financial well-being is more crucial in certain cultures than in others?
Well, I think that financial and life well-being matter in all cultures, but they differ in how they go about it. For example, one of the things that I found out as I was researching the book, and it's likely something you and your listeners know, is that the rate of home ownership in Spain is really the highest in the world. The lowest is in Switzerland, where more people are renters than homeowners. Now, there are economic reasons for that. In Switzerland, for example, protection of renters is much greater than in the United States and probably in Spain. But there's also a cultural part to it, such that when people from Spain or Switzerland immigrate to the United States, they still bring that culture with them. And so people from Spain are more likely to buy a house, and people from Switzerland are more likely to rent. For me, coming from Israel, I'm kind of like a Spaniard. I didn't really think about it. Of course, I'm going to buy a house rather than rent it. I did not go into the financial. I did not do my calculations. I just know that what will give me pleasure, what will enhance my well-being is to have a house of my own where I can paint the walls any color I want, where I can even move the walls, where I can change things. I know that it's a hassle. If my dishwasher goes bad and damages the floor, who pays for it? Not the landlord. I pay for it. But altogether, it brings me well-being. And so this is just one example of culture. There are really many more. For example, as you mentioned, in countries like China and India, being a graduate of a top university is really, really important. And there are good reasons for that, because to get a job in government, you need to have a degree from one of the top universities. And so you see that here, all my neighbors are from India. And we have one reason they buy houses in Cupertino, where I live, is because we have a terrific high school, very competitive, where kids go to top colleges. But of course, you can see the downside of that. Think about arranged marriage. In fact, I know many people from India who married by arranged marriage. And they're very happy. They say, my parents actually know me more than I know myself. And so they choose well. Of course, in other places, in the United States or Spain, the burden is on us, And so I met Nava at the university. I took her out to the movies. I persuaded her to marry me, and then I introduced her to my parents. It is not like my parents introduced Nava to me.
Well, in fact, here in Spain, as you mentioned, our parents told us to rent a house is wasting money. It's a matter of wasting money. You need to be the owner of your own house. So it's cultural, of course. It's cultural.
That is what my parents said.
Now it's a little bit changing, but it's just a question of the price of the houses. It's very difficult to buy. It's difficult as well to rent, but it's easier to rent than to buy. Let's move to financial crisis, Meir. In 2008, for example, have had a profound impact on people's well-being. Could you talk about how these crises have affected general well-being, and whether we've learned anything that could prevent such devastating impacts in the future?
Well, we do learn, but let me first talk about the impact. The impact was horrendous, and it really stayed with us, even though the stock market and prices of houses are much higher than they were in 2008, because lots of people really lost their houses. They defaulted, they couldn't pay the mortgage. Lots of people lost their jobs after that because we went into a recession. The scar, that injury of 2008 is with us. And people, you can see that in the politics of today. It really affects people to this very day. Now, people have learned, and policymakers have learned. One of the problems that caused the debacle in 2008 was that it was so easy to get a mortgage on a house. All you had to do is lie and say that you have plenty of income, you don't need any down payment, and you just say, well, I'll just buy this house. What will happen? Maybe I'll be lucky and I'll get a job that pays enough to pay the mortgage. Maybe the prices of houses will just go up and I'll be able to sell for more than I bought, and so on. Now, you cannot really get a mortgage by lying. You have to really provide documents, and people are going to check that the lenders are going to check that you have that ability to buy it. And so as much as we want Americans to be the ownership society, as in Spain and in Israel, we know that some people, just as you said, cannot afford to buy. And just getting them into a house with a mortgage they cannot afford is just going to be heartache. And there were so many sad stories. I remember one about, you see a picture of people who are evicted from their house. Their furniture are outside. The toys of the kids are outside. They cannot take it with them. And so not only did they lose the house, they lost all of the things that they bought to furnish this house and so on. Terrible things. And so we do learn. Sometimes we learn too slowly, but we do learn.
We need to learn. Even I know in Spain, some cases unfortunately happened. People even lost his own life or her own life. They commit suicide after to be evicted of the house. It's horrible. It's really horrible. And we know how the global impact of this crisis, because, for example, the mortgage problem in the United States can affect the pensioners of Norway pension fund, for example. It's global. It's let's look to the future. Well, in fact, it's not exactly the future, it's the present. But what do you think it should be the next generation of behavioral finance? What it will bring us?
So just to give background, as I said before, we started with standard finance, where people are rational. And in the first generation of behavioral finance, say at the beginning of the 80s, and I was part of it, we said people are irrational because, for example, they trade too much. And so rational people want to maximize wealth. Irrational people also want to maximize wealth, but they commit all kinds of cognitive errors that prevent them from doing that. For example, they trade too much, they fail to realize losses, and so on. In the second generation of behavioral finance, what I said is people care about more than wealth. People care about things like social responsibility. And so some people are willing to give up some returns to be true to their values. And so, they don't want to have tobacco stocks or fossil fuel stocks or whatever it is that they are against. And in the third generation, I expanded it to look at life well-being. And I said, what is it that normal people really care about? Eventually, they care about well-being beyond finances. Now, where does it go from here? People ask, what is on the frontier of finance? Is it artificial intelligence? Is it ESG, financial, socially responsible investing? I say that we should not think about it as a frontier, but rather as a circle, as an expanding circle. And so some of the lessons of standard finance, for example, in the pricing of options, still matter. But we have to look at cognitive and emotional errors and how to correct them. We have to look at the fact that people who buy stocks care about more than the returns, in the same way that when we buy an automobile, we don't just care about its safety and gas mileage. We also care about style. We also care about prestige and so on. And so my sense is that different people are going to expand that circle in different ways. My way is not in machine learning or artificial intelligence. That's not my thing. But there are people whose thing is that, and they are going to do very good work in expanding the circle. Mine is in working on what it is that people want, what it is that normal people want, and how it is that we can enhance well-being. And so that is really my sense of how the field grows. We look at theory, we look at the world, we put them together, we look at new things like artificial intelligence, and we say, what does it say about finance? Can we apply it? And so on. And this is how the field grows.
Okay, wonderful. So, dear Meir, it has been a real pleasure and a deep learning experience to talk with you. But before we say goodbye, I'd like to ask you the question that closes all of our episodes. How do you see your future self?
Well, so here's disclosure. As you can see, I'm not a young man. I'm 77. But I'm still a professor.
You are a young man,
I'm
of course.
still engaged in teaching. I'm still engaged in scholarship. I'm still mentor students. And so what I see, I'm a very fortunate man because my job and career are a vocation, as I said. Really, it is kind of like a vocation of a priest or a physician or a nurse, that you really get satisfaction from what you do. You get thanks from students, for example, and so on. And I remember my teachers from high school and how important they were. And so I try to be like them and hope that my students will remember me. And I'm also fortunate in that I have established a financial well-being. I have enough money so that I don't have to worry about. But I'm not without pain. That is, we have our older daughter lives with mental illness, with bipolar illness, and so I think about well-being really as a portfolio. In every portfolio, there are stocks that are wonderful. There are stocks that really are miserable. Every family has its points of pain. And I've learned over time, and it's not an easy lesson to learn, to look at the world, to look at my well-being as a portfolio. And I say, look at it. Yes, you have a daughter who is disabled, but you have enough money to support her without constraining your budget. And she has a younger sister who loves her and supports her. And that gives us much, much comfort knowing that. And so that really is the case. So I hope that I'm going to be teaching and doing scholarship for the foreseeable future, and that all will turn out well, although I know that some things will not, and I reconcile myself to the fact that when something bad happened to me, it is not because God chose to inflict pain on me, because life is just like that.
Life is that, hopefully you can reach your goals, and hopefully we can enjoy for many time your teachings for everything. Thank you so much, Meir, and thanks to all of our listeners who join us in this fascinating discussion about not just finance, about well-being, about life. We look forward to seeing you in the next episode of My Future Self. Thank you very much.
And thank you, Diego, and thank you to the listeners.
Estás escuchando Mi Yo Futuro. Síguenos en Spotify, iVoox y Apple Podcast.